President Muhammadu Buhari promises to improve welfare of women in Nigeria as African Union Summit ends in Addis Ababa.
Many fear dead as Boko Haram insurgents attack Dalori village in Borno State.
Islamic Development Bank to develop comprehensive plan for reconstruction of northern Nigeria.
Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we focus on the plight of awaiting trial persons in Nigerian prisons.
Now we all hear of the common saying, justice delayed is justice denied. Now, an age-long saying which resonates in the case of many prison inmates in Nigeria, especially those awaiting trial.
Well, let's put it this way. Now, if a person is apprehended by security agents for allegedly committing a criminal offense and then subsequently detained in a prison for upwards of 8 years awaiting trial, how would such a suspect feel at the end of the day?
Well, Kingsley, let's situate your question now. For instance, according to reports, one Peter Samuel, now not real names, was arrested along with 6 others in 1995 for allegedly killing a well-known politician. Now, after 15 years of protracted trial, Peter was discharged and acquitted along one other. Now, the others died while in detention.
Well, this is not an uncommon scenario in Nigeria. Now here, a number of accused persons are facing similar situations with their trials dragging on for years without any end in sight for their plight.
Oh yes, now that development has led to congestion in Nigerian prisons as more and more people are being arrested by the security agents on a daily basis and remanded in facilities already filled with inmates. Most of them are awaiting adjudication of their cases, and most others, on the death row, while others, of course, are having a live, service.
That's right. A person on death row, of course, has already been tried, sentenced, and then condemned, and just awaiting the hangman. But in the case of those who are awaiting trial, certainly, as you have said, is the case that there are a number of factors that are responsible for the reasons why persons stay for so long a time, including the 8-year period that we just indicated, as well as the Sam Peter or Peter Samuel that you referred to earlier. Now, according to the National Human Rights Commission, about 70% of inmates in Nigerian prisons are awaiting trial persons.
In fact, statistics available to us reveal that an average of 212 inmates are clamped together into each of the 227 prisons nationwide. Now, this is a situation that has become a source of major concern to key players in the administration of criminal justice system in Nigeria.
Well, in the figure you just indicated, Claire, about 227 prisons. Of course, we also have to account for the state of prisons in the northeast of the country, especially in Borno. A number of those prisons have been wiped out in the course of insurgency by Boko Haram. Now, previous administrations had taken various steps aimed at removing obstacles to the quick dispensation of justice. Now, to that end, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act was passed.
So why is the number of awaiting trial persons, why is it continuing to increase in the Nigerian prisons, in spite of these various reforms being carried out by governments? These are some of our talking points on today's edition of the program, Good Morning Nigeria. From wherever you're watching, we're very glad to have you join us here in Abuja, and we're looking at the plight of the awaiting trial persons in Nigeria. I am Claire Dilabu Abdul Razak, and today is the 1st of February. It's called the Love Month.
Kinsley and Claire, how do you call in this month Lovers Month? Well, I'm proud to say it's the month of my birth, but I won't tell you the birthday. Good morning and welcome to the morning news. The federal government has promised enhanced budgetary allocation to specific projects aimed at improving the lives of women and guaranteeing their economic rights in line with the change agenda. State House correspondent Adamu Sambu reports that President Muhammadu Buhari made this promise while addressing African leaders at the 26th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has challenged African leaders to do whatever it takes towards ensuring that AU's vision of silencing the guns and minimizing deaths related to preventable conflicts in the continent by the year 2020 is achieved. Speaking at the special session on security held behind closed doors at the 26th AU Summit, the president decried the use of Africa's scarce resources on armed conflict. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Bulus Lolu, spoke on some of the issues discussed.
Said that Africa has no choice but to commit now, not to the target of 2020, to silence the guns on the continent. I believe that this is a statement that the continent and the world should listen, because he said we are Western lives and resources. That is needless. We can channel those resources to development. We can channel those resources to better use on the continent. And having him make this statement to the assembly, coming also from him as Nigeria, is an inspiration for the rest of the continent. General Al-Sisi, in fact, said that Mr. President's emergence was a fulfillment of his personal wish as President of Egypt. All along had been wishing that a strong leader will emerge in Nigeria, and that because with a strong leadership in Nigeria, Africa will be better. And he invited Mr. President, of course, to work with him in all areas, economic, political, social, and cultural, so that together we can build our bilateral relationship, but not only for our benefit as two countries, but that Egypt and Nigeria working together will also provide leadership and benefits for the continent.
Back home, Boko Haram insurgents have attacked Dalori village in Borno State. Eyewitness accounts said the insurgents came into the village in 2 golf vehicles and motorcycles. They were said to have opened fire on the people and burnt houses. Some people were reported to have died, while others sustained injuries. 3 female suicide bombers who attempted to detonate improvised explosive devices were intercepted and subsequently got blown off. The theater commander of Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Hassan Umaru, assured the people of the military's resolve to continue to protect their lives and property. He commended the people of Dalori for their resilience and urged them to remain resolute in the fight against insurgency. Meanwhile, the Multinational Joint Task Force has stressed the need for better coordination among stakeholders to effectively secure areas recaptured by troops from Boko Haram insurgents. Correspondent Muhammad Goni reports that the civilian component of the task force made the appeal while on an assessment visit to the border between Nigeria and Cameroon.
With Engineer Wakil and other team members in Jamaica, I believe that we have people who can adequately protect, promote, project, and preserve the interests of the people of the Northeast.
The Islamic Development Bank is to develop a comprehensive plan for the reconstruction of northern Nigeria, according to the bank's president, Dr. Ahmad Muhammad Ali. Dr. Ali stated this in Jeddah headquarters of the bank when he received a delegation of 5 governors from the northern Nigerian states Governors Forum. The delegation, led by the governor of Borno State, Kashim Shettima, includes Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje of Kano State, Nasir Ahmad Al-Rufai of Kaduna State, Umaru Tanko Al-Makura of Nasarawa State, and Mohammed Baduru Abubakar of Jigawa State. In his remarks, the leader of the delegation, Governor Kashim Shettima of Borno State, stated that the region will certainly benefit from the IDB's gesture. Also speaking, IDB's Vice President, Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, told the delegation that the bank will do its best to look into various areas of intervention, particularly in the development of infrastructure, which is a key priority in the bank's 10-year development strategy. Vice-Chancellor of Obafemi Awolowo University, Professor Bamitali Omole, has commended the Information Minister, Lai Mohammed, for the vibrance and freshness that he has brought to his new assignment. Professor Omole, who stated this in Ife when the university hosted the minister as guest lecturer, said, through determination, Alhaji Mohammed has risen from opposition to government and proven himself a worthy role model for the upcoming generation.
Now he's a minister. You know, the spirit of a militant is different from the spirit of a one who is a minister. And with the
policies of the present administration, the decision was taken at the National Executive Council meeting of the association held in Abuja.
We want to play a role in the new agricultural policy of this administration. That is why we will also be part of the platform that is going to be created for the Minister of Agriculture of Nigeria to be able to tell Nigerians what the policy decisions as far as agriculture is concerned in Nigeria today.
So if the government can earmark some areas for farming activities, activity all over Nigeria, then we will have food on our table.
We have mobilized our farmers. We have sensitized them at the grassroots, only for the government to come out with a definite policy to drive the agricultural growth.
And as the news is back to Claire and Kinsley, both of them standing by and good to go.
All right, thank you very much there, Lydia Sampson, for the news. We hope that when a birthday comes, you'll let us know. Not on air, though. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, it will be time for our business package.
Nigerians, do you know the look of a suicide bomber? They're usually in loose or heavy clothing, usually inappropriate for the weather. They carry bags or packages. They tighten their hands or keep them in their pockets. They are unaware of their surroundings, always alone and nervous. They'll be found driving cars, moving very fast or extremely slow. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. If you see something, say something.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, time to talk business now, and entrepreneurs say government should come up with models peculiar to Nigeria to make the sector more prosperous. And the new electricity tariff kicks off today. Details with Leah Katun Babatunde.
Hello and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria Business News. As government makes frantic efforts to see other sectors of the economy emerge viable in the way, the Regulatory Commission, Dr. Anthony Aka, has said the new tariffs will enable the new distribution, generation and transmission companies to acquire the necessary infrastructure. Aka said there is no going back on the new tariffs, adding that the lack of cost-reflective tariffs had hindered the electricity companies from acquiring the necessary infrastructure to provide optimum services to consumers. He said after the new tariffs have been implemented, the power companies will no longer have any excuse for not delivering on agreements they entered into with the government. Accordingly, under the multi-year tariff order, all premises must be metered and consumers who subscribe to specific metering models must be supplied meters within limited food resources. Adding to the dire situation, Yemen was hit by 2 cyclones in November 2015, which heavily disrupted fishers' livelihood along the country's coastlines. And that is Business News this morning. Have a blessed and pleasant week ahead.
All right, Leah Katung Babatunde, thank you very much there for the business package. Now it's time for us to take a look at the headlines in today's newspapers.
Today. Now, fire raises orange apple markets in Abuja and Nasarawa. And Biafra, nobody can break Southeast and South-South bond. That's, of course, iPod. Details of that you can find on page 4. Kingsley.
Well, that's right. Let's take the Guardian newspaper. The front page of the Guardian has as the lead story, the protest as new electricity tariffs begin today. That's the lead story for the Guardian, and it has 3 riders to it. It has 3 riders. So the first rider says, man insists charges breach court order and mediation fails to pacify users. And
that they should put that on hold.
Well, incidentally, a week ago exactly, we had the Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing as our guest on the program, and together with 2 other guests, who discussed the issues that the Honorable Minister raised. And this was one point that the Minister touched on in terms of the new tariffs that are due to take off. And he explained, the circumstances surrounding the new tariff structure that is due to take off today.
Yes,
that's taking off today, and the cost effectiveness of the vehicles burnt. And then that's below the photograph of the child. There's a caption, ground zero, over 300 houses burnt by the insurgents. And then the last photograph says, women mourn after the attack on Dalori near Maiduguri. Of course, right there you can see that's the corpse of, that's the burnt corpse of some livestock. And then, of course, those are the photographs depicting the carnage that occurred over the weekend at Dalori near Maiduguri. The front page has other headlines that we have read from other papers. Anti-graft war. That's the kicker. Judiciary, my main headache. That's attributed to President Buhari. Details on page 7. And electricity, again, that's the kicker. Anxiety as new tariff begins today. Details on page 21.
And Kingsley, the Punch also has all the stories, and indeed the picture story of the aftermath of the Boko Haram attack on Dalori village. Boko Haram burns children, kills 86 in Borno. You see, of course, the remains of some of the livestock. Bayo.
Yes, it's very worrying. The human interest aspect of this story is the Boko Haram has been decimated, no doubt about it. But there is this renewed onslaught that needs to be taken care of by the military. You recall that last Friday, there was an attack in Chibok market when it opened freshly. Then a day later at Adamawa, a town Gombe in Adamawa, at an international grains market, there was also another attack. There you have about 28 people were injured, and the deaths were also in their almost up to a score. Then on Saturday, there was this attack at this place that is called Dalori. Dalori is said to be about 5 kilometers away from Maiduguri. And it said that the insurgents came in 2 golf cars and motorcycles.
Though we speak different languages and celebrate different cultures, we were still one Nigeria. There was no bombing, there was no kidnapping, and our children were not cultists. Now, we suspect one another as there are spreads of cultism, bombing, and kidnapping. How long shall this go on? Terrorism is alien, kidnapping is criminal, cultism is barbaric. Nigeria is a blessed country. Support the Nigeria Police and the fight against terrorism, kidnapping, and cultism. Always inform the police of any incident around you. Say something when you suspect something.
Remember, we all have a stake in building a crime-free Nigeria of our dream.
This message is from the Nigeria Police Force.
Can you believe it, guys? All this top-notch furniture. It's made in Nigeria. I said made in Nigeria. How do I look, guys?
Made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria. Come to Made in Nigeria TV Expo and Exhibition 2016, where Nigerian manufacturers and producers meet buyers and also showcase your products to over 150 million Nigerians and the global audience online. So many other products are produced here on a daily basis. Booking and hotel reservation. Call 080-6422-1412 and 070-3768-1520. Call now, guys.
All right, time to kickstart our conversation this morning. And with this background, prisons all over the world set up by law to provide restraint and custody of individuals accused or convicted for criminal acts by the state. Now, in Nigeria, the prisons are characterized by overcrowding, with greater number of the inmates there awaiting trial. Now, Timothy Yusuf has this background report on the plight of awaiting trials in Nigerian prisons.
Over the years, there has been growing concern over the continuous detention of accused persons in prisons without getting justice. This necessitated previous governments in the country to constitute various committees charged with the responsibility to evolve ways of fast-tracking justice delivery in Nigeria with a view to decongesting the nation's prisons. In spite of these efforts, coupled with the promulgation of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, the number of awaiting trial persons have continued to go up in the Nigerian prisons. Available statistics from the National Human Rights Commission show that about 70% of inmates in the 240 Nigerian prison institutions are awaiting trial persons. According to a report by Amnesty International, more than 3 out of every 5 prison inmates in Nigeria have not been convicted of any offense. Instead, they wait years for their trial in appalling condition. This situation leads to overstretching of facilities in the prisons. Some analysts argued that the prevalence of awaiting trial persons is an abnormality observed to be frustrating crime prevention and control, as the inmates are mixed up with the convicts who might end up influencing them into becoming hardened criminals. It is no longer news that from north to south, east to west, the prisons are overcrowded with inmates whom are mostly awaiting trial persons. The phenomenon of high rate of awaiting trial persons has become a source of concern to the Nigerian criminal justice system that continue to prompt agitation to decongest the prisons. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, who is equally disturbed over the development, emphasized need for judicial officers to ensure access to justice to all.
Right, thank you very much there, correspondent Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. We have a number of guests to discuss this subject matter this morning. First, at this time, we'd like to welcome Professor Etanibi Elemika. Of course, it's a familiar face. He's the former chairman of the Presidential Committee on Prison Reforms and Rehabilitation. He's also, of course, a professor of criminology at the University of Jos. Professor Elemika, it's our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Okay.
It's also our pleasure to have joined us in this conversation Mrs. Nella Andem-Rabana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former Attorney General and Commissioner of for Justice in Cross River State. We'd like to thank you specifically for coming.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay, and then we also have with us Dr. Peter Ezenwa Ekwendu. He's, of course, the Comptroller General of Prisons. CG Prisons is our pleasure.
May either go up or come down. Let me give you a little example. We had a program in female prison on the 28th of January. That was last week. The inmate population of that female prison in Kirikiri was 230 something, but the following day just 2. Then in Adamawa, I can't say precisely because we had to make some adjustments here and there. A good number of them were closed down because the prison almost formed a home to lean onto whenever the insurgents attack the prisons. Their interest is simply to pick the inmates there who would help them as support force. So that is it.
All right, CJ, Prisons, we'll come back to you in the course of this conversation. Well, Professor Alemika and learned senior advocate,
during the time of Captain Henacho, he was taking some measure, then ran into some bad politics. He was removed. That's where that report ended. But let me just say the 64,000 figure is not a problem. It's the composition of that figure. We're always very lucky when it comes to criminal justice figure that we're doing exceptionally so well that I get scared sometimes. American population is twice Nigerian population. On an average day, there are about 2 million people locked up in American prisons. I don't think it's one of the models we should copy, but just to give you that, if you have 64,000 in Nigeria, you are doing very well. It's the composition of ratio of 75% of them are waiting trial. Unfortunately, prisons are not established to hold awaiting trials. They are established to help reform, to retrain those who have run into problems. So when you then find your function lopsided in terms of what you are not expected to do, or it's not your core function, you know your core function suffers. But looking at the prison problem, we must always remember we use the word criminal justice system. The problem that the prison has is not the problem of prison. And when you are reforming, you must know what you can do within prison to solve the problem.
Thank you. Actually, just flowing from what you said, I have actually visited the prisons on a number of occasions, especially as Attorney General. And in some of these prisons, they really are congested. And it's very sad when you think that 3/4 of the population have no business being there. Because, like the professor said, the prison is built and the personnel are trained to handle those persons that have actually been convicted of a crime. Meanwhile, you have a category of people, some of whom ordinarily would have been granted bail and gone home. But because they can't afford bail, so they are tossed into prison, and most of the time they are forgotten. Then you even have some, because the offense is not bailable. So you cannot, if you don't, if they are not tried, then of course they can't leave custody, so they are there. So the question is, given the various initiatives that are ongoing, and even I remember during the Chief Bayojo, there was this prison decongestion exercise that was going on. Lawyers were asked to go, were engaged to go into the prisons, interact, find out. Because I am personally concerned. Because
let me take you back to something someone said, the Solicitor General and Permanent Secretary Minister of Justice. And I'm quoting, said the criminal justice system in Nigeria lacks necessary policies. And
a governor, for instance, to exercise that right based on advice, to release, for instance, a person who is has been in custody for an alleged offense for which he has overstayed. Because, for instance, if it's people who are what we now know and term as awaiting trial prisoners. So in terms of the laws, I believe we have the policies in place, we have the law in place, you have the overriding law, which is the Constitution, in place, but are we prepared to implement and take responsibility for what we are supposed to do? Because you even have legal counsel Legal aid.
Kinsley,
Legal
yes,
aid,
exactly. Kinsley,
yeah.
just before you continue, that is maximum, within reasonable time limit. Now, do you think that that clause, within reasonable time limit, is being exploited, by the courts?
Yeah, that's the whole point. You see, the law is one thing, but administratively, the administration is the reality, and that is our reality. That is our nightmare. People, they know what they're supposed to do. Like this this Administration of Justice Act, it even says 14 days. After 14 days, if you don't remand this man,
Do you have? Because these are persons obviously you relate with or relate to on a very regular basis. 64,800 persons in prison, 75% of them are waiting trial. What is it that you are getting in terms of their conditions?
It's already very clear that when you are dealing with a large number of persons that we see in places of detention and in prison, particularly here, we have persons, of course, that many have alluded, who need not be in prison because they are not the persons who have committed those offenses. So this is like the innocent being wrongly in prison. Secondly, there are people who have committed offenses, but those offenses are minor offenses, and alternative imprisonments needed to be adopted. Thirdly, there are persons who have committed those offenses and serious enough that they need to be detained in prison, but there need to be processes that need to address how you're keeping them so that when they leave the prison, they will not reoffend. One issue I will mention here, just as if it's rider, is that when you look at the congestion rates, the proportion awaiting trial, and by the way, by 2010, around the period 2001, we were dealing with population of prison around 36,000 plus. Maximum is about 38, 39,000 persons. And today, we're talking about 64,000. So you can look at how much pressure and stress that will bring on the facilities of the prison, on the workload of the prison officers. How do you separate awaiting trials from convicted prisoners? In principle, it's becoming more and more difficult. So I think that this brings up a lot of human rights issues that we also need to address. The conditions of their treatment, the accessibility to their lawyers, accessibility to adequate sleeping arrangements, and many other things that is associated to that.
Well, thank you. Well, you've raised so many points, and we might, from your contribution, we might be dealing with much more higher figure than the CG has given us. But again, I know that from research that the UN standard minimum rules for treating persons in prison or in detention forbids some inhuman and degrading treatments. Of course, there are modern functions of the prison service. How much do you think, from your interactions, has Nigerian prison system complied with modern functions?
It's been quite a big challenge. Last year, 2015, the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners was revised, and now we have the new law, which is the Mandela Rules. We also have the Bangkok Rules that specifically speaks to the conditions of female prison and the treatment of female prisoners and also children within places of detention. And I think by saying this, I think I need to also say some very positive thing that I saw. I mean, the CG mentioned about being in female prison towards the end of January to commission certain projects. I was also in that prison that week, and I was so impressed by what I saw. I was impressed by the facilities, and I think this is one place that that really we need to speak about certain things that we have been improving in terms of the facilities. But having said that, there are needs, there are things, and let me just give one example of what is in the Bangkok rule, which I saw in place in the female prison curriculum. The issue about making sure that there are designated places like crèches where mothers and their children in prison, will be able to be attended. And I'm talking about women perhaps who are coming to the prison pregnant, or women who had their little babies in prison. I saw that being constructed in that prison. Actually, it used to be there, but it's now being upgraded and it's been expanded. I saw facilities for proper exercises. I saw the whole place, painted and all the rest of that. But it's not just female prison, Kirikiri, that is the only prison in Nigeria, we've seen that there are many areas that requires reform. The need to ensure that prisoners are treated humanely. And I can give you one example. When you talk about the accessibility to families, when you talk about proper visiting environment, when you talk about ability for the inmates, if they so will, to have access to skills and training facilities. In some regards, some of this is happening, but in some other regards, there's still a lot that needs to be done. We need to talk about
with the administration of the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Presenter. Indeed, I would stress this point which Uju talked about. By law, we are mandated to keep prisoners of all classes. That is why, if you look at the Prisons Act, one of the main objectives is to ensure safe custody of persons confined in prison facilities by competent courts of jurisdiction. This includes both the awaiting trials and the convicts. But there is, given a global picture of Nigerian prison facilities and inmate population, one would say, okay, A to Z, across the board, there's no congestion. But then, when you go to those cosmopolitan prisons, we have a lot of congestion. Let me give you statistics of this before I come to your question. The capacity of Port Harcourt prisons is 804.
Death penalty and another. In other climes, you
the two longest law in the National Assembly today, fundamentally, is interesting, is the Prison Law and the Police Act. They've been there for no less than 10 years, and they've never been passed. It's gone through about four or five different legislative sessions, and they've not been passed, both of them. So you find the Prisons Act is as old as 50 years, and fundamentally 80% of that act is actually a repetition of 1916 ordinance. You find the Police Act is basically 1943 ordinance. So we have not even come together to say, what should the prison be doing? So the philosophy is outdated. The kind of range of function we want to attribute to prison is outdated. Like, it's cited by both Uju and the CG. The two functions in the law is simply to keep convicted prisoners and those legally interned, which means those who had been convicted and those who may not have been convicted but sent there by, those are the two functions in the law. So I think basically we can separate them. But in terms of some of the things you talk about jail, in the American system, it's also a hierarchy. You find that the jail is operated by the lower subnational jurisdiction and the higher correctional against state and federal. We have a unitary system of these. And 80% or 90% of these,
you don't have enough evidence to charge him. You keep him, you remand him, pending when you can, come up with the evidence. So, and that is done on citing the holding charges thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just a manner of operation, because it's what you even suffer even with the EFCC. So I agree that it's a critical problem, but I don't know, maybe it will be a matter of policy more than anything else, because ordinarily a man is apprehended, arrested for under suspicion of committing a crime. He's taken to a lower court, say the magistrate court, and then it appears what he's being charged for is higher than. So the only thing left for the lower court to do is to send him to a prison on a holding charge. That is, that's more often than not, that is the scenario that you experience. So the issue here now is, I don't think it's about a law. It's more about procedure.
Procedure, yes.
It's more about taking responsibility. It's more about sometimes even just being reasonable. Because
equate with the weather at all. They always carry big bag or many load like who they travel. They always tight hand like blow or even put their hand inside pocket like who called the mama. Sometimes suicide bomber like to tanda alone, they fear. And they know they send waiting they happen around them all. Sometimes then they drive motor fast, fiam. And sometimes now so they go they drive slow, they terrage. If you shadow any kind load where then drop, or messing with kurukere waka when not pure, I beg, me will report and give police or other security agent one time. The security of we country, now everybody handy deal. Nigeria, may we unite against terrorism. If you not see something, may you not say something. Now Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, bring on this message you.
All right, thanks for joining us wherever you're watching from. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're looking at the plight of awaiting trial inmates in Nigerian prisons. So we understand there are over 75% of those out of the 64,800 prison capacity prison population so far. Let's again get to Enugu Center where Dr. Uju Agomo is. Dr. Uju Agomo, we're talking about the holding charges, and you listen to the senior learned advocate here talking about it. It's one of the issues that people point at when we talk about prison congestion, the number of awaiting trial inmates in prisons. What are your views? What do you think it's happening, and why should the police keep on administering it?
Thank you very much. I think, yes, you are correct. It is a big problem. One may ask, why is it that once there is a decision made to present this suspect to court, that it's not taken directly to a court that actually should have jurisdiction to try that matter? Because ab initio, before they move, they probably would have decided, are we charging this person for armed robbery? Are we charging for what? And I think this is a very big gap. Now, I think there is also some connection between this and the earlier point that the CG mentioned, which relates to the fact that a lot of people who you find now as awaiting trial are there mainly for capital offenses. Some of the research we have conducted have shown that this can be, in some instances,
issue of salary, being able to pay salary will not be there. That's one issue. Then secondly, do those inmates know their rights? And if they do, how do they go about accessing their rights?
I think that is one issue. Basically, it is part of what is provided within the Mandela Rules, which is the UN Standard Minimum Rules, the revised UN Standard Minimum Rules for the treatment of offenders, that once any inmate comes in, that first and foremost, you should let this inmate know that they have rights and also they have responsibilities. They have, duties to deal with that. So it is quite part of the issues that needs to be put in place. I think some years back, precisely 2011, there were certain projects that Prawa implemented with Nigerian Prison Service, which basically tried to produce information pack in different languages for inmates, and in different languages, and then this pack was mentioning different things that inmates need to know and deal with. Now, the question is that how far has this been used? How far is this ensuring that it is implemented in terms of, are there complaint procedures? Are there complaint processes that are put in place whereby an inmate will freely be comfortable to make a complaint, and that these complaints will be addressed speedily? And I think we need to look at this in two sides. I believe that in prisons, as well as every detention facilities, needs to provide a mechanism that should deal with internal human rights oversight amongst themselves. Set up a mechanism to deal with that, in addition to independent external mechanisms, which we do have. I mean, in the standing order of the prisons, there are provisions for prison visitors. In the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, a bit is not generally being applied now. There are also provisions for monitoring committee and all the rest of that. So I think that it is, I won't say that every inmate know their rights. And when I say this, I am not talking about only prisons. And please note that whenever I'm addressing the issues of persons awaiting trial, I think also about those people who are in other detention facilities. So I think this should be made mandatory, that whether the person is in police or detained at any of these agencies, first thing is that.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria, Kingsley.
Well, that's right. We have a number of tweets, as I indicated earlier. One from Iheme Bulem Morgan. He writes, I think our judiciary should be blamed. It's important that this issue is well addressed to save people's lives. Another one from Bright Irene. It says, if Nigerian prisons are congested with inmates, the prison authorities should engage them in farming.
And Sane Michael Omakuji tweets, not until the rules of laws are made popular like football in Nigeria, this aberration will continue to linger on.
Okay, well, let's come to an aspect. Let's get it clear. Prison as an item wasn't always on the exclusive list. There's a historical background to all of this so that we know where we're coming from and then where we intend to go, considering now what is obviously the phenomenal explosion in the population of prison inmates. A few years ago, it was about 30-something thousand, now it's 64,000, even though the figures are fluid. Professor Alemika, why did we have why did we have prisons on the exclusive list at the time we were?
Is that there's meant to be a template that should be followed. And so there's not everything that they can do and is restricted to the local issues. My thinking is that if you were to have that sort of scenario, the federal prisons will continue to operate, but then you have, for those states that feel that they have the capacity, they will have the manpower, they will satisfy, they will have the funding, they will probably have a minimum amount of money that they would show that they have to sustain the system and the process. And then requirements of training, there are a whole range of things. But I think that there would be wisdom, I believe.
All right, Mrs. Nella Andem Rabana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Cross River State. Would you like to thank you very much for joining in our conversation?
Thank you very much.
And of course, our own Professor Etanibi Alemeka, former Chairman, Presidential Committee on Prison Reforms and Rehabilitation. Thank you very much for coming, sir.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we've been discussing the plight of awaiting trial inmates in Nigerian prisons. We thank you for joining in the conversation. Right now, it's time for sports.
That's right. We go over to our correspondent.
From New York Film Academy, Abdulmajid has transformed his passion and dream to reality. His other works include Silenced Voice and Abu Dhabi.
Brilliant work and quite innovative. That's the spirit. Always follow your dream. Good morning, Nigerians, and see you next time.
Let's check out the weather prospects for the rest of today.
Thank you for joining us on the weather segment. Observations and satellite imageries shows persistent transport of dust particles from the Sahara Desert into the country, and as a result, further deterioration in horizontal visibility is anticipated over the extreme fringes of the north. The central states and the inland cities of the south are probable to low visibility values of about 2 to 5 kilometers due to dust haze conditions. However, these northern cities are likely to experience very windy conditions. The coastal cities are also likely to experience dust haze in reduced horizontal visibility. Now let's see how this weather would affect the temperatures for the day.